So it's January 2nd, 2021. We're through 2020. And I wanted to take a little time out here on this pretty Saturday afternoon and tell a hunting story about one of the more exciting hunts I've had. I've been hunting for over 40 years, and this one was pretty fun. It was up in Arkansas on public land the week before Thanksgiving during the rut, and the story has a bunch of levels to it. That's why I kind of need to tell it. So prior to going up to Arkansas, I figured out what hell is to a deer hunter. And what hell is being stuck at home during perfect hunting weather, during the rut, during opening of gun, while roofers pound on your roof for 5 days, putting in a new roof that was destroyed during the hurricane season that we had down here in South Louisiana, while your buddies are up there hunting. That's my definition of hell. So I paid the roofer, and the next day I was on the road going to Arkansas, and on the way up between here and Opelousas, Louisiana, I got pulled over by the Grand Coteau police. I just paid that ticket. It cost me $202. So I think I was going 81 and a 70. I was all excited to get up to Arkansas and start hunting. So that's part of the story. Anyway, got up to Arkansas, and about the third day, I finally decided I was going to slip back into an area that I'd scouted several months earlier. I had a couple of trail cameras in the area, had some decent bucks on it. And I'd seen some good buck sign, and it's one of those real classic transition zone areas: creek bottom, hardwoods, thickets, two different age clear cuts, a young clear cut and an old clear cut, and they all kind of came together at this one particular little area. So that's what I was going to hunt. So I got out there at 4 o'clock in the morning. I got up at 3, got my coffee, got in the boat, and got to my spot where I got out of the boat at about 4 o'clock in the morning. Got up in the tree, and I had a beautiful meteorite shower. It was a clear, calm morning. It was going to be a nice hunt no matter what happened. And I saw several really beautiful meteorites. Daybreak came, and then about 8 o'clock in the morning, I heard a grunt down in the bottom, and I turned around with my rifle and got situated in that direction. I was maybe 25 feet up the tree in my old man climber, pine tree, and so I was waiting for whatever it was, and it was coming my way. I could hear brush breaking, and it sounded like more than one deer, and sure enough, shortly after I got turned around, this doe came busting out of the undercover, and she was running like Usain Bolt, and she came just tearing out right underneath the base of my tree, and right behind her was this guy, and he had, all I could see from where I was sitting was width and height. He had width and height. And he was tearing out. He was going to pass on the backside of my tree, so I turned around and did a Clint Eastwood, Dirty Harry, fire from the hip shot, which is totally out of character and just, it makes no sense at all. But I was just so flummoxed, I couldn't get my scope on him in time. I just let go a shot, and felt completely ridiculous after I did it. didn't cut a hair. I got down about 10:45 and checked and followed their tracks because they had torn up the leaves, and I could see for a couple hundred yards no sign of hair or blood or anything. But I knew when I saw him, when I saw this guy, I knew I was going to spend the rest of the day hunting there. And so I was hunting with a bolt action 30-06, shooting a 150 grain bullet. And that's important to keep in mind for the rest of the story. So I moved over about 11 o'clock in the morning. I took a nap at the base of a pine tree for an hour or so, hour and a half, drank some water, and I don't know, about 1:30 I got up a tree about 200 yards from where I'd missed in the morning, and everything was just perfect. The sun was behind me. I was looking down into the draw, into that clear cut area and that creek bottom, and I had a thicket off to my left, and I had the hardwoods behind me to the right. And about 2:20 I heard footsteps down in the creek bottom, and for 20 minutes I could hear something coming, and just real slow and not in any hurry, just walking in. And pretty soon, way down in that bottom, I could see this just kind of coming through the thick stuff. I could see the left side, and I could see kind of height. I knew the deer had some tall horns, and I'd already shot a pretty decent buck with my crossbow earlier in the season. And so I was holding out for something decent. I wasn't going to just shoot any legal buck that came by. And the more I could see him through the thick stuff, I realized if he stepped out in the open, I was going to take a shot. And there was an opening down below me that I had my scope on, and I was watching him, and I was waiting. And just before he got to that opening, he turned and went up into the clear cut. And I watched him for 30 minutes up in that clear cut, right at the edge of it, and he was raking on some pine trees, and it looked like he was even nibbling on a vine or two, and I could see nose, eyes, ears, horns for 30 minutes. And about 20 minutes of that, I decided I needed to do something to hopefully make something happen, because I wasn't sure what he was going to do. Was he going to keep on going through the clear cut? And was he gonna, I didn't know what he was going to do. So I grunted for about 10 minutes. Maybe a grunt every minute, and then I quit. And about 5 minutes after I quit grunting, he turned and started back the way he'd come from, and then he turned and came right directly towards me. And at that point I knew that I was probably going to get a shot. And he was about 125 yards in the clear cut, and so now he's walking down towards me, down towards me, down towards me, and I've got my rifle on him, and I've got my crosshairs on his chest. And he's just coming straight towards me, straight towards me, straight towards me, straight towards me. And finally he stopped at the creek, and it looked like, from what I could tell, he was looking for what had made that grunt. And so he had filed that grunt call away, and he was coming to check it out. And he stood there, and he stood there, and finally I realized that maybe that was my shot. Maybe that was what I should do. And at 70 yards, a shot at the base of the neck is not a difficult shot. So I settled the crosshairs, and I squeezed. My rifle went snap. It dawned on me that in the excitement of the 8 o'clock random shot, I had not jacked another bullet into the chamber. And so there I was with a really nice buck looking right at my tree. I had the sun behind me. That was in my favor, because I think that may have caused him some problems. So now I had two decisions. I could fast jack it, or I could go slow, slow, slow. And I decided to go slow, slow, slow. So he's looking, and I jacked it, and then pulled it back, and then took the shell out, put it in my pocket, and then eased it back down. And he was standing there the whole time. He didn't move, just looking. And he heard all three clicks. Click, click, click. So put the crosshairs back on the base of his neck, pulled the trigger, and he went down like a ton of bricks. He was just down, didn't move, didn't kick, nothing.
Right there.
And I sat up there for about 30 minutes just kind of relaxing. It was about, I don't know, 3:15, 3:20 by now. Just appreciating what had just happened, kind of replaying the events of the day, and just being generally thankful that I was able to get up there in the woods and go out and spend all that time out there and have this encounter with this beautiful animal. And so I got down and I went over.
Oh my gosh. What a beast. Whew. That's him. That is him. That's just a giant 6-point. Good mass. Big old deer. Big body. Oh my gosh.
And yeah, I was shocked to go up and see just what a massive 6-point he was. I've never seen a 6-point like this. This is the biggest 6 I've ever come across. So that was pretty cool. Stayed there a while with him. And then I took all my gear except for the base of my climbing stand back to my boat. Rifle, hunting gear, anything I didn't need for processing, because my boat was about half a mile away from me, and I was about half a mile through the woods, and I was not dragging this. I don't know. He had a big body. He could have been in the 180 to 200 pound range. I wasn't dragging him back. It was going to be a process and carry out. And we've done that a few times here in the swamp. So dropped everything off of the boat, grabbed the processing kit, and brought everything back, and made pretty good work of processing him. Quarters, front quarters, back quarters, back strap tenders, neck meat. That all worked well. Got everything in game bags, got it all in the pack. And boy, when I tell you that was a heavy pack, did I tell you that was a heavy pack? So anyway, that's just part of it. It's a labor of love. If you've never packed out a deer, you should do it. And I always enjoy it, even though it's so physically demanding. So by the time I got back to the boat, it was slam dark. It was dark, and I loaded everything up in the boat. so I did a snapshot on the buck in the morning. I didn't have a shell jacked in my gun for the second shot. Now I get to the boat. It's a hydroelectric lake. So they have drawdowns every day, and I hadn't even thought about that. My boat had been parked there since 4 o'clock in the morning. My boat was sitting on a mud flat, and I hadn't noticed it when I had taken my other gear back. And I couldn't budge the boat. The temperature was in the low 40s. It was going to go down into the low 30s that night, and I could not. There's no cell communication out there. I was in a bind. I had been up since 3 o'clock in the morning. Fortunately, I had a gallon jug of water with me. That saved my life. Literally, it kept me going. So anyway, now I had the dilemma of how do I get this boat off of this mud flat with what tools I had available. I tried levers and limbs and rocks and prying and pushing and pulling, and pretty soon my back was seizing up. I'm not the youngest guy in the woods. I'm 65. So that was definitely a factor in the whole thing. But the boat wasn't moving. It was stuck in the mud. So what I finally assessed and decided I needed to do, I have a cleaning tripod. I'll show you a little video of that here. I'll show you the cleaning tripod that's portable. And I use it on public land when I'm in an area where I'm using my boat to process my deer near the boat. So if I can get the deer to the boat, I process them on this tripod. So I had that tripod, and I decided that if I put it just slightly outboard, the center of the tripod, just slightly outboard of the lower unit, I could perhaps use the winch and crank the rear of the boat up off the mud, and it worked. I was able to offset my tie point. Here's the rope I used. This is a piece of it because eventually I had to cut the rope. That's part of the story. So I was able to offset the top of the tripod, tie off to the lower unit, use the crank the bottom of the boat up, and then I was able to move it literally 2-3 inches towards the center of the tripod, and wash, rinse, and repeat. Do it again. I did that 7 times, so I was moving the boat about that far every time. On the 7th time, the cable locked up in the winch. So the cable's locked up. I'm about ready to lock up. My hands are feeling like they got rigor mortis. I have to actually take, and I think it's from dehydration, and to get my fingers to not be claws. So I was getting pretty close to terminal as to what I could physically do. And so the cable got locked up in the winch, the boat's under tension, the motor's lifted off so I said a prayer, a fervent prayer. Lord, please help me get off this mud flat. Please help me. So I got my knife out, I cut the rope, the boat settled back down, and I got behind that boat and gave it a wiggle and a pull, and gave it a wiggle and a pull, and gave it a wiggle and a pull. And don't you know, before long I had it out, it was floating in the water. In the meantime, I had taken everything out of the boat, the 12-gallon gas tank, the deer in the packs, all my hunting gear, all the stuff that just lives in the boat. It was all back up the bank, and I'll show that video of kind of what the bank looked like the next day when I went back to retrieve my game cameras. So I carried all the stuff from the boat and put it all up on the dry part of the bank up there. And there, that kind of shows that's all my footprints from yesterday. That little tiny stump out there is what I was using off the back of the boat to use my come along and try to keep the boat out. And the bow of the boat was right here. So that little tiny stump and the bow of the boat was right here. And it was pitch dark and not much fun. So I had to get all that back into the boat, load up, and crank on back to the launch. And so I don't know. So because of all those different elements, that's what makes this a really special hunt. I took this deer into the taxidermist to get it European mounted. I just got it back today. And the taxidermist looked at the jaw and he said this was a 6.5-year-old deer. So it's an old public land buck that's been running around out there for a long time. I had 2 chances at him. You know, killed him at 3:15 in the afternoon. I mean, how awesome is that? My takeaway, what I learned from the whole thing, other than the fact that I'm stupid and I'm not as cool as I think I am, I learned that I can always learn new stuff. Even though I'm 65, I've learned that I'm going to keep on making mistakes. I'm going to learn that I've got a lot more to learn. And that really, that's the bottom line of this whole story, is even though I'm 65, been doing this for 40 years, I still have a lot more to learn. I still get extremely excited. I still love the prospect of going out in the woods and seeing something like this come by, even though it's very rare and it's like a lightning striking. But I love to hunt. This rope will be part of the part of the display, and I don't know. I did score him just for fun to see, because he's such a unique big 6-point for down south, and he scores at rough score, a good score, gross score of 116, which is, I had guessed him to maybe be as high as 120, and he scored at 116. So anyway, still love the adventure. If it's too easy, I don't really like it. I like things to be hard, and this was certainly a deer that falls into that category. And I just appreciate all my buddies that I get to go hunting with, and everything that hunting entails. From the time you go out in the woods, checking the cameras, chasing them down, processing them, getting them in the freezer, and then serving them to my family, and then everything else that's involved, all the other creatures and critters coming and going. So this is my hunting story. I hope I didn't bore you with it. I hope you enjoyed it. I tried to tell it like I would tell it to my buddies or tell it around a campfire. And I've thought about how I would do this, and I think this is, I'm gonna see. I'm gonna put it all together. I'm gonna put the edited version together, and we'll see how it comes out. So I hope you enjoyed it. Later.